Hello everyone, this is the first video in the development log for Mysteries and Shadows. Hopefully I'll be adding videos about once a month. This first video is about the development process I'm working with. My name is Andrew, and Stormwood Studios is my little one-man indie game development studio. Mysteries and Shadows is my third title, and it'll be available for smartphones and tablets when it's finished. This game is inspired by the 1940s and 50s film noir detective movies. The player will take on the role of a private investigator working their way through the story. It'll be a relatively short game to play through, but it has multiple paths through and several different endings, so hopefully players can find some replay value in it. I've been working on this for a couple of months now, so I have a little bit to show off. Now, this isn't a straight-up tutorial series or anything, and I won't be taking you through how I did every last thing, but I will be showing off various aspects of it. And if you're a student or somebody thinking about making games, or just somebody who is interested in the process, hopefully you'll find this interesting and a little informative. This is running in the Unity engine right now, so I'm going to go ahead and stop that and bring up a couple other things here. Now, one of the things you'll find is that every development studio has their own process, and every game is even a little bit different because every game has its own specific needs. But there is a lot of common ground, and one of the things that everyone does is documentation, and the most important document is the game design document. And this is even something that's important if you're working by yourself. What it's going to do is it's going to force you to sit down and really think about your game and understand it and what it's going to take to make that game. Basically, the game design document is like a blueprint for the game. And as you can see, this one is already 40 pages long, and I will be adding to it as I add more of the actual in-level dialogue. So it's still a work in progress, though most of the main areas are filled out. Now, I'm not actually going to go through this in any depth here, but you can see a little bit of what is included in the game from the table of contents. Plus, there's spoilers and stuff, so I didn't want to go down into the spoilers of it. Now, like I said, this game also has multiple paths through it, so I've done a flowchart that gives me a visual representation of the ways through the game, which is a lot more handy than the written representation that's in the game design document. And again, I won't actually zoom in on this because it contains spoilers as well. Now, the other thing you'll find is that everyone has their own development pipeline, and that's kind of dictated by what the game needs and what software you're working with. And basically what that is a way to create or acquire assets and bring them into your game and ultimately building the game. Now, some of the tools I'm working with are tools like Blender here and Make Human. I'm using GIMP and Audacity as well, and like I said, I'm using the Unity game engine. Now, whatever tools you're using or wherever you're getting your assets from, it's important to make sure that you're legally allowed to use those for the purposes that you're using them. Now, most of what I'm using as far as software is open source software, and there are a few things that I am downloading. Unfortunately, I simply cannot create every last asset, from the music to sound effects to models, textures, and everything. There's just too much, and it's beyond my skills to be able to create all of those items, and beyond my time constraints. So when you're doing that, it's important that you document what you're downloading and keep uh, track of things. It's handy to only download from a few specific sources, and like I said, document everything. That way you can make sure you that you comply with the licensing. Um, Now, the stuff I'm downloading is mostly variations of the Creative Commons license, and mostly I'll just have to make sure I give proper credit and provide links to websites and whatnot. Um, Now, I've got Make Human up right now, and one of the things that this particular game needs is maybe about 15 to 20 characters. I don't remember offhand. And Make Human is a very handy way to make characters to streamline that, because actually modeling characters and rigging them is a very time-consuming process, and Make Human does allow for uh, a much more swift process. Now, there's other ways to get characters, but one of the things that's nice is using Make Human, I can make sure that they all have the same skeleton, um, which also helps with sharing animations. Now, I'm actually using a little bit older version of Make Human here, because they do have this particular skeleton, which is a little less complex than the more current versions have, which is handy for mobile games. So after I am done doing the basic step in Make Human, I will bring the model over into Blender, where I will make some changes. One of the things is I'll make sure the clothing is the way I want it. And then I will also do things like make sure the character is one piece, and it uses, and all the textures are on a single texture sheet. That way the entire model can use the same material, and which streamlines the rendering process. The other thing I'm doing here is I'm also adding a proxy shadow caster. Now this is a much lower poly version of the model that isn't actually rendered in the scene, but is used to cast shadows. So you can get halfway decent shadows without having the expense of rendering a full character again. Because the way that works, it renders the character once to display on the screen, it renders it again to create the shadows. So we can, and since shadows are, just a two-dimensional black form, basically, all we really need is a very low poly representation, and we can get pretty decent shadows from that. Also using Blender for all of my modeling, as well as UV texturing, and along with GIMP, which is kind of like Photoshop. It's an image editor, but it's an open source one. So what I'm doing is I'm creating all of my assets in a modular fashion, or most all of my assets, so that I can build rooms and environments using only a handful of assets, and have several different unique rooms and environments instead of modeling entire areas. And using modular assets like that is really the only way I could handle the volume of assets that I would need to make a game like this. And it's actually a common thing. Larger studios will do that as well for a lot of things. If you look closely at games, you'll see that assets are reused, that beams and pillars are used all over the place. It's the same model. From there, they bring stuff over into Unity. Now, let's go ahead and bring this up. Now, if you're used to Unity, you might be wondering where everything is. And I have two monitors here, so all of the inspector and everything is over on my other monitor, and the game world is here. So here's an example of an area where I've gone ahead and brought in several different pieces that make up one room. You have several different pieces of flooring instead of one large floor. The other thing I'm doing is making sure that all of these pieces use the same texture. I'm using a texture atlas so that when I create the material that goes on this, every object in the scene, with the exception of the characters, is using the same material. Unity and basically most game engines are going to use some kind of batching system for rendering, and it reduces the draw calls a huge amount, which improves performance if you use the same material on as much as you can, because then stuff can be batched together. So that's basically how I'm working, bringing things into the engine, from creating characters and models and bringing things in. I think at this point we'll wrap things up here. Probably next time I'll get into how I'm actually setting up the various scenes and creating the environments, how the actual levels work, so that you can get an idea of how the process I go through for building a level and making it function. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll come back for the next video when I get that done. Thank you.